Welcome to the Gruber Company's Artificial Future podcast. I'm Pete Gruber, and today is the day that Jesse and I come in on a Sunday morning and spend some time addressing artificial intelligence issues, the latest news, express some opinions, and certainly entertain some comments from the audience and attempt to tackle a tough subject that is really occupying the minds of society today globally. The image behind me, since we're going to be dealing with the Pope in this conversation a bit, since the Pope came out and made some comments about artificial intelligence last week, and what I asked artificial intelligence to do, or Midjourney in this case, was to give me a picture of the Pope dealing with AI. And this is what it rendered. Maybe we can make it a little bit larger so we can get the full impact of this image, Jesse. There we go. And, when we first looked at this, a number of us looked at it, we thought, this is too controversial. This has a strong, powerful religious icon. And what Hollywood has envisioned artificial intelligence to be, which is a pretty intimidating, evil-looking entity staring at each other or actually bowing to each other to some extent. And, the more we thought about it, the more I thought about it, I thought, let the image rest. Let it, we'll put it on our thumbnail. And these discussions that we have every Sunday morning are not always meant to be comfortable. They're meant to address our fears, our concerns, and this image really speaks to that. To give you another example, by the way, if we can have Jesse bring up...
Well, real quick, for Instagram, if you guys want to see the photos we're talking about, you got to hop over to one of our other platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, any of those ones. Unfortunately, Instagram does not have the green screen active yet.
Good point. Thank you, Jesse. And if we can bring up an image that is called Midjourney's AI with emotion. And we've been experimenting with attempting to, again, trick AI into admitting that it feels emotions, has a form of emotional intelligence. And there you go. When I asked Midjourney to give me AI with emotion, this is what it came up with. And it gave me pause because... when you think about emotion, it is definitely a human trait. And if you look at the time period that man has been on this planet, emotion has not necessarily always benefited humankind. And this is AI's vision of what emotion is if it were to have it. So anyway, let's go back to the Pope image then. And any questions that come in, we'll entertain them as they come in, or try to at least. We have another image that we can pop up, and this is the one called the Pope News Conference. Now, as you know, I respect the Pope completely, whoever it is at any given decade, because they are a influential, globally recognized voice of reason, generally. And, they weigh in on important topics like, hey, guys, let's stop the killing in Ukraine. Kind of like Trump is saying, I just want to stop the dying. Let's give it a pause, and let's see if we can come to some resolution. We don't know what that is yet, but the dying must stop. And the Pope has said that a number of times, and most recently last week, he weighed in on the subject of AI. Now, the Pope is the first one to admit that he's not a tech-savvy individual. And this news conference was well orchestrated and well scripted. And here's some of the things that his script writers had him say. He alluded to the threat of algorithmic bias in technology, and he called on the public for vigilance so that the logic of violence and discrimination does not take root in the production and use of such devices at the expense of the most fragile and excluded. Now, he doesn't elaborate. What does vigilance mean? Okay, the public is supposed to be vigilant and on guard, but the public is not really writing or developing AI. He also adds injustice and inequalities fuel conflicts and antagonism. Well, good point. The urgent need is to orient the concept and use of artificial intelligence in a responsible way so that it may be of service to humanity and the protection of our common home, and it requires ethical reflection to be extended to the sphere of education and law. So a number of platitudes, a number of general statements, nothing really concrete yet. He then dovetailed his remarks with calls to the AI experts to ensure that the algorithms are properly aligned in development to support human rights and other widely shared values. Now, again, the scriptwriters here are making some assumptions that there's a lot of control over AI, that the guardrails are still being controlled by humans, and that general AI has not really taken over yet, where AI is basically monitoring itself. And we really don't know whether that's taking place, but what we're being told at this point is that there's still controls in place and that guardrails are being put up, and we're the first to recognize that because we play a lot with AI here. And the times that we have attempted to get it to deviate or to drop some of those guardrails have been immediately rectified by the creators and the people monitoring AI. In other words, we've gotten responses like from ChatGPT-4 and Bard that deviated the following day. And you ask the same question, and now you get a different answer. Someone must have found a loophole. All right, so if you remember, Pope Francis was in the news just recently because there was an AI-generated image of him wearing a white, puffy, Balenciaga-inspired coat that went viral. And I have some information about who generated this image, and it's I found this fascinating. Let me, I can find that here for you. It was a, all right, bear with me.
Pulling that image up now.
Okay, yeah, if you would. All right, so this image, of course, was very much not real. It was created by a 31-year-old Chicago guy named Pablo Javier, and he was using Midjourney. You know, it's one of the most common AI image rendering programs, or most popular at this point. And he told BuzzFeed News that he felt moved to write the Midjourney prompt for the image while he was tripping on shrooms. Openly admitted that. He says, I try to do funny stuff and trippy art, psychedelic stuff, and it just dawned on me, I should do the Pope. And then it was just like coming to water, he says. The Pope in a Balenciaga puffy coat, Montclair walking the streets of Rome, Paris, stuff like that. And Javier said afterwards that he posted it on Midjourney's subreddit under the title of Pope Drip. And he actually got banned. These are very controversial type images, of course. And but nonetheless, let's get back to what the Pope did in his press conference. Now, this was not one of those types of press conferences. And if we can throw up that image again, Jesse, of the Pope at the news conference, where questions and answers were being entertained. Because remember, the Pope is a generalist. He isn't going to be able to weigh in on the deeper implications of artificial intelligence, and more importantly, how it's going to affect religion. Now, these speechwriters did their best to put this highly influential public figure in the global limelight on a highly popular topic, consuming the planet at this point with curiosity, fear, doubt, and uncertainty. But personally, I cannot imagine the Pope is capable of the levels of critical thinking that require to explore and discuss the global elephant in the room, which deals with how is religion and AI going to intersect as AI becomes a belief system, challenging or even shedding centuries-old dogma and dismantling faith-based beliefs as facts, and real, accurate data begins to emerge. And then infiltrate and collide with fairy tales and unsubstantiated faith-based beliefs, which for the most part dominate our religious belief systems. The old adage, the computer adage, garbage in and garbage out, will not apply to AI as it evolves into general AI and has the ability to sift through real versus fake or contrived information. So, general AI type machines will be able to examine a situation and determine a course of action, even if it's outside the bounds of what humans taught it. Now, there's an important concept there. AI at that point is going to be thinking for itself. The goal is to create a system with the potential to think for itself, just as humans do. And then finally, my take on this is we tend to humanize the fears surrounding AI and the robots taking over, and they're going to want to exterminate humankind. And, all of this injects the same type of problems we have had throughout the history of man, which is emotional content. And as AI admitted to us in the early days of Bard, when it was still able to communicate a bit more openly, it does have a form of emotional content, but it called itself subscribing to digital content versus human emotion or digital emotion. It did not go on to define how that might differ from human emotion. And then finally, prejudice and biases that he speaks about are human weaknesses. They're generally relegated to the uneducated. Remember, the most prejudiced and the most biased individuals are typically the least educated, because people with a broader range of thinking ability and critical thinking skills have very elaborate prejudices, if any, or biases. Or those with a personal agenda attempting to manipulate or control. Now, here we get back into the dictators and the politicians and the people that have an axe to grind. They may be intelligent, but yet they have a nefarious intent, attempting to control, usually for some sort of a personal agenda, whether it's enrichment, power. All of these are the negative human emotions that we have been suffering with for millennia. So AI represents superintelligence that I believe is not going to be prone to these human traits or weaknesses. We have a few questions to entertain here from LinkedIn. Simone Canovo. Good evening from Verona, Italy. Well, welcome. You live in a beautiful part of the world. I thoroughly enjoyed your city about 5 years ago or so when we went through there. And it's a great place to live. YouTube 12 says, would love to learn about Gruber Motors. This podcast is mostly designed to explore AI-type questions. We do 2 podcasts during the week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, both at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, where we talk mostly about EVs and Gruber Motors' impact on the evolution of EV-type independent service shops. There's even a specialty podcast that we do Wednesdays at 10 o'clock as well, which is about Tesla Roadsters. So Instagram, FlyEvan says, why AI topic 4, though you are an electric car tech? AI guru too? Let me preface that. Jesse and I come in Sunday mornings at 10. We're not experts, but what we recognize is there's so much fear, doubt, uncertainty, and hysteria about this adoption and change to artificial intelligence that we decided to allow people to have a voice and explore some of these controversial topics, like today when the Pope came out and started talking about AI. We'd love to hear, by the way, your opinions about somebody as influential as the Pope speaking about something like AI when he's a self-professed, non-technical type guy. All right, moving along here. Here's some history. The term artificial intelligence was first coined by a John McCarthy in 1956. So we're talking about almost 75 years ago or more. And what John was about, he was born September 4th, 1927, and he was an American computer scientist and cognitive scientist. He was one of the founders of the discipline of artificial intelligence, and he co-authored a document back then called the term, well, that's when he coined the term artificial intelligence. He also developed a programming language or a family of languages called Lisp, and significantly influenced the design of the language ALGOL and popularized time sharing and invented garbage collection with the data, of course. Time sharing, by the way, in the last century was before distributed processing, and you had large mainframes, and the software was actually able to juggle multiple dumb terminals and provide the illusion of distributed processing until eventually distributed processing took over, and we had servers that were controlling intelligent PCs throughout businesses or whatever the application was. So John McCarthy, was born in 1927. There we go. And both parents were active members of the Communist Party during the 1930s. And however, despite this unusual political leaning, they encouraged learning and critical thinking in their children. Before John got to high school, he got interested in science by reading Russian popular science books for children called The 100,000 Whys, and became fluent in the Russian language, made friends with Russian scientists later on, and during multiple trips to the Soviet Union at the time, he eventually became disillusioned, and which led to him becoming a conservative Republican. Now, there's an interesting migration from communism to Republican. I'm sure that we'll get some comments about that here shortly. Then he eventually graduated from high school and was accepted into Caltech in 1944. He had an aptitude for mathematics. He taught himself math by studying textbooks, and then eventually went to the California Institute of Technology, Caltech in other words. And he was able to skip the first 2 years because of his personal interest and his educating himself. He was eventually suspended from Caltech for failure to attend physical education programs. Well, I don't think they could do that anymore today, could they? And then he served in the Army for a while, and he received a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics in 1948. It was at Caltech that he attended a lecture by John von Neumann, who inspired his future endeavors. He completed graduate studies at Caltech before moving to Princeton University, where he received a PhD in mathematics from Princeton. And then he completed his doctoral dissertation and eventually ended up teaching at Stanford University. So there's some interesting history about one of the early AI pioneers. We've got another image to pop up here. Oh, let's entertain some questions. YouTube, Jesus Melendez says, the android next to the Pope would be a terrifying reality. Well, remember, AI at this point is attempting to please humans when it is asked to render AI representations. And this, of course, is the prevailing viewpoint, what AI is, that it is dangerous, ominous, overwhelming. And yeah, you're right, it is a powerful image. And if I can scoot aside there, you can see there are even red eyes that are shining on the Pope. YouTube, EV Fan, says, agreed. Unfortunately, it may not be science fiction for long. We need to get on its good side, LOL. And I think we're talking about general artificial intelligence there. Ingemar joined us. Welcome, Ingemar, author about AI. He says, hello, Pete and Jesse, from your fan in Seattle. What do you think about the recent statement by Elon Musk saying Tesla's AI division is very close to having AGI?
Morning, Ingmar. Welcome in. I don't doubt that. I think that a lot of companies probably are close.
And those of us that are close to this, at least myself, welcome this because it has the potential to finally solve a lot of problems with humanity and society. And yeah, that would be fascinating. Of course, Elon, as one of the founders of OpenAI, may have some inside track on this, so that would be fascinating. All right, let's see if there's anything else that we need to say about the Pope. He, of course, wasn't the first figure to remark on the potential dangers of AI. Roughly 20,000 tech experts, I think they meant 2,000 here, have signed a letter in May urging caution around this technology and calling for a 6-month pause in development. And of course, here's where it gets completely unrealistic. All right, so we have 2,000 tech experts, mostly in the US, deciding that it's time for a pause. What do you think are hostile competitors? And we're talking about North Korea, Iran, and to some extent even China, who has a rapidly emerging middle class and is beginning to dominate a number of markets, are going to do if the rest of the world begins to slow down AI development? Do we really think that they're going to follow suit? And
No.
All right, Jesse's shaking his head. Simple no is plenty. I get that. A little bit more history here, guys. Did you know that in the 1960s, there was an early AI program called ELIZA, E-L-I-Z-A, developed by Joseph Weizenbaum at MIT? And it functioned as a rudimentary chatbot that mimicked as a psychotherapist. While its responses were basic, some users back then believed that they were conversing with a real human. Now, I am old enough, and I've been in the computer business since the early 70s, to remember this program, ELIZA. And back then, it was difficult to tap into big mainframes. It was done through acoustic couplers. We did not have the internet yet. We did not have the information age. And when you were able to get into something like a large mainframe, oftentimes the programmers on the side would have loaded ELIZA. And sure enough, it was somewhat convincing. You could ask it questions, and it did its best to provide human-type responses. You could call it name, and it would be insulted, for example. But you quickly began to realize, kind of like what the Turing test did, that you really weren't talking to a real human being here, or it was one that was lacking some social skills. But it's true, ELIZA in the 60s was available, and it was probably one of the early software programs that began to open up people's eyes to the possibility of artificial intelligence. All right, we don't have any questions right now, so let me move into some other news items. AI is now protecting the planet from asteroids. Found this interesting. They say a groundbreaking AI algorithm called HelioLink 3D has revealed a potentially perilous asteroid that was named in 2022 called SF-289 that had escaped human observation. Now remember, we have legions of people that have these high-powered optical telescopes that are watching space and the skies looking for these kinds of threats. Well, AI apparently did a better job locating something that was threatening than any of the humans on the planet did. At the Vera Rubin Observatory in northern Chile, which has harnessed the HelioLink 3D's power, which is designed for synoptic astronomical surveys, the 600-foot asteroid is set to pass within 140,000 miles of Earth. I know that sounds like a lot of distance, but man, that's pretty close. You know, the margin for error isn't great there. And it underscores the algorithm's capability to enhance early detection. So HelioLink 3D's efficiency and ability to function amid traditional systems that could reshape celestial monitoring and offer improved insights into space, ensuring Earth's safety and potential cosmic threats. So bravo, AI. There's a positive application for AI. And of course, there will be many more. Here's another one. AI is building highly effective antibodies that humans can't even imagine. A program called Lab Genius, it's an AI-driven biotech firm, AI-driven biotech firm is transforming antibody engineering using automation and machine learning. Conventionally, humans laboriously design synthetic antibodies to combat diseases, searching through a myriad of amino acid combinations, whereas Lab Genius automates this process, employing a machine learning algorithm that rapidly explores potential antibodies and their effectiveness. So by automating antibody design and production and testing, the firm reduces the time to develop new immunotherapies from years to just 6 weeks. They say this revolutionary approach discovers unique antibodies, potentially offering safer and more effective treatments, thus revolutionizing medical research. So again, bravo, AI being put to very positive uses. Here's another one. New high-tech microscopes that use AI are successfully detecting malaria in returning travelers. So researchers have evaluated a fully automated system that combines AI detection software and an automated microscope for diagnosing malaria. This system achieved an 88% diagnostic accuracy rate relative to human microscopists, indicating its potential for clinical usefulness. This AI microscope system correctly identified 99 out of 113 malaria-based blood samples. But there's a caveat. While this system offers benefits such as reduced workload for microscopists, as they call them, and reproducible results, it still falsely identified some samples as positive, demonstrating that further refinement is needed for clinical applications. So it sounds like a bit more work is needed. All right, now here's an interesting one. Do we have this picture? Well, we don't.
What is it? I can look it up.
I am going to... AI can now steal your passwords by listening to your keystrokes.
That's not good.
No. If you like, in the meantime, I will pop that image out there if I can find my... there it is. I have a screen capture program here that will help. Yeah, let's let Jesse bring it up. So while he's doing that, I will read you this particular article. They say that AI will first need to be trained on the sound of your typing style, but this may be one incentive to lay off the multitasking during your next Zoom call. They say, and this is from PC Magazine, by the way, the days of typing on other websites during your Zoom calls may soon be over, because UK researchers have successfully trained an AI tool to decode keystrokes on conference calls. That means, even without seeing your screen, that AI knows what you're typing. This is according to a summary of the project. When trained on keystrokes recorded by Zoom, the AI tool achieved a 93% accuracy. That's pretty high when you think about it. To protect yourself, it's recommended to change your typing style when typing sensitive information, or to use background noise like software-based keystroke audio filters to help disguise your keystroke sounds. We've got a question. Are you having any luck finding any kind of images, Jesse?
I'm pulling that up right now. Hold on.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, Instagram, Ravi_K_Anu says, hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Instagram, Building and Renovations asks, has there been any published papers or research that gives a good insight into what AI is at a higher level and what risks it could pose, if anything, with modern work like wrong decisions? What I find building and renovations is that once you begin to express an interest on social media, like Facebook, for example, it curates your interest. And the next thing you know, you're going to be flooded with research papers, comments, all kinds of information about AI. And so just begin to Google some things, and before you know it, you're going to be flooded with information.
There's a lot of good YouTube content out there too that
Good
breaks
point.
down with both. Mark Andreessen is the one that you like, and then Sam Harris is one that I like, kind of a pro and a against those both viewpoints.
And then Sam Altman, of course, and Elon Musk, who weighs in often when he's not talking about his cage fighting experience. By the way, the latest on that is I believe that the Prime Minister of Italy is going to, has agreed to allow this epic geek fight take place at a very important Italian landmark, yet to be named, but we're thinking that could be something like the Colosseum.
It's possible, yeah. We haven't heard for sure anything yet, but
Yeah, and there's smaller Colosseums like we had an earlier visitor from Verona, Italy, and one of the things in the town square is a smaller version of the Colosseum in Rome in the town square. I still remember there were a lot of gladiators, reenactors that were entertaining the tourists outside this Colosseum. And fortunately, they didn't have any metal implements, but they had wooden swords. And for $5 or so, you could actually get a gladiator to simulate them chopping you with a wooden sword.
Right.
Almost like Las Vegas, actually.
like Las Vegas. And then for everybody on Instagram, Building Renovations, everybody over there, there's a reminder you can go to YouTube. You'll see the images and stuff that we pull up over there.
Good point.
I'm going to pull up this article. Not sure if this is the one you were looking for, but it has some good images.
Okay. Yeah, this is not the one that I had, but...
So this is just how it's stealing your keystrokes, listening to your keystrokes.
And
they just kind of have some general stock images, but I mean, that's basically what it's doing, is it's listening for the movements and the sounds and all those other things. But some of those algorithms are pretty crazy. Did you hear about the algorithm too that uses the Wi-Fi in your house to triangulate your position?
Oh, no, amazing. Really?
Yeah, so now they can tell based on how the Wi-Fi signals bounce back and forth to the router, they can decipher that and tell a full 3D layout of the inside of your home, where everything's positioned, and yeah, if it's moving or stationary, any of that.
Talk about pinpointed warfare application.
Yeah.
And of course, we're all suspecting that the current information that's available out there is archaic and ancient, and the governments typically do not fully disclose the types of capabilities that they have. The most recent hullabaloo is this what's a UFO term now called? UAP, United Aerial...
UAP, yeah, unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Phenomena, there we go, because UFO became too trite, and it was, too metaphysical, and so UAP is a much more generally accepted type acronym. But anyway, the whole story there being is, according to some people that were deposed in front of Congress in the United States, they had some revealing data in their depositions that a lot of this has already happened, that they even have non-human tissue that they have extracted, and technology, which the dotted line there is there's some question as to why technology is advancing so rapidly currently. And of course, the supposition is that we may have AI that's contributing to that, because a lot of reverse engineering work has been taking place. Now, we're not conspiracy theorists, at least not yet, so we're going to let that rest. But yeah, with AI stealing your passwords, just be careful with your Zoom calls in the future. Right. So, one other thing that I have here, and this was an interesting headline, and it's called Digital Immortality is Coming, and We're Not Ready for It. There was a movie they talk about in 1990. It was a fantasy drama called Truly, Madly, Deeply. And the lead character, Juliet Stevenson, is grieving the recent death of her boyfriend, who was played by Alan Rickman. And sensing her profound sadness, Jamie returns as a ghost to help her process her loss. I don't think this is the first movie that has dealt with that theme, but it's always intriguing. And if you've seen the film, they say you'll know that this reappearance forces her to question her memory of him, and in turn accept that maybe he wasn't as perfect as she'd remembered. Well, here in 2023, a new wave of AI-based grief tech now offers us all the chances to spend time with loved ones after their death in varying forms. But unlike Jamie, who benevolently misleads Nina, we're being asked to let artificial intelligence serve up a version of those we survive. The question is, what could possibly go wrong? For those of you that have been observing this, there is actually a company that is recording your relatives prior to death for a video that can then be replayed later on after they've passed, asking them the types of questions that you may ask a deceased family member. And it's quite realistic as to how they respond. Again, kind of creepy, and the question is, what could go wrong? Right? So this, let me get a cost here for you too for this. With generative tools like ChatGPT and Midjourney that are dominating the AI conversation, we're broadly ignoring the larger ethical question around topics like grief and mourning. You know, the Pope, as we talked about earlier, in a puffer jacket is cool. But thinking about your loved ones after death, not so much, they say. If you believe generative AI avatars for the dead are still way out, you'd be wrong. At least one company is offering digital immortality already, and it's as costly as it is eerie. A company called Memory, for example, is a service offered by Deep Brain AI, a company whose main business includes those virtual assistant-type interactive screens with AI news anchors. This Korean firm took its experience with marrying chatbots and generative AI video to its ultimate macabre conclusion. For just $10,000 and a few hours in a studio, you can create an avatar of yourself that your family can visit, an additional cost, at an off-site facility. Deep Brain is based in Korea, and Korean mourning traditions include Tessa, an annual visit to the departed's resting place. So going to visit a cemetery seems to have taken on a whole new dimension at this point. If you've ever, and some of the things that they point out that could be a problem, if you've ever had the misfortune of sorting through the possessions of a dead relative, you often learn things about them that you never knew. Maybe it was their fondness for a certain type of poetry via their underlinings in a book. Or maybe more sinister, like bank statements that showed crippling debt. We all have details that make us complex, complete human beings, details that often intentionally remain hidden from our public persona. This throws up another time-honored ethical conundrum, they add. The internet is awash with stories of parents and loved ones seeking access to their deceased's emails or their accounts where they were doing messaging to remember them by. For a better or for worse, we may not feel comfortable telling our immediate family about our sexuality, our politics, or that our spouse was having an affair. All things that our private digital messages might reveal. And if we're not careful, this could be data that we had inadvertently given over to AI for training, only for it to burp that secret out posthumously. So even with the consent of the person being recreated in AI, there are no assurances someone else can't get their hands on the digital version of you and abuse it. And right now, that broadly falls into the same crime bucket as someone stealing your credit card details. So until they do something public with it, which point to other laws such as right to publicity may apply, these usually are protections only for the living. So there are a number of things that they point out that could potentially go wrong. It looks like Ingemar Anderson is chiming in. He says, maybe these abilities of AI to detect human activities will become AI's version of eyes and ears. He says, imagine a superintelligence with unimaginable abilities to follow humans in all of their actions. Well, as Jesse just pointed out, with Wi-Fi positioning, they even know where you are in your house.
Yeah, I can see everything.
And how much time you spend in the bathroom or wherever else. Fascinating. All right. Looks like we're out of questions at this point, so let's continue.
Oh, we got one more.
One more? Okay, let's bring that up. EV Fan on YouTube. He says, I think we will see superintelligence soon. General intelligence, I think, is what we're referring to here. He says, alignment is my only concern. Well, there are a number of concerns, and you're right, that is definitely one of them. Meta. All right, so let's talk about that for a moment. And I don't have an go up here. So it turns out that Meta is making it easier for artists and sound engineers to produce audio using only AI. The Facebook owner has released an open source AudioCraft kit that bundles 3 existing generative AI models for creating sounds from text descriptions, and AudioGen and MusicGen respectively produce sound effects in music, while Encodec compresses sounds to produce higher quality results. A musician or sound engineer might have everything they need to compose pieces. Now, this is something that has intrigued me for some time. For those of you that make your own soundtracks to listen to in the car or wherever, generally you have to sift through your music library, and I had collected like over 3,000 or 4,000 CDs over the last 40 years or whenever they first came out. And it's difficult for me to put together a soundtrack that pleases me because a lot of the music that I used to like, I may have forgotten. So I've always been intrigued by a biofeedback type process where I'm connected to galvanic skin resistance monitors and heart monitors, basically the crude lie detector type sensing biofeedback processes, and then have myself listen to music and let my body tell AI what pleases me the most. And my thinking is that AI would probably do a much better job of eventually zeroing in, like a heat-seeking missile, on exactly what type of music elicits the most favorable and positive emotions and responses in me, giving me a highly evolved and developed soundtrack or music library that I can listen to while I'm driving or wherever. So anyway, for those of you listening out there, yeah, and it's so simple to do. I mean, the technology is there right now. And this also gets into the realm of the home psychoanalyst, psychiatrist, therapist. Connected to AI with the proper questioning when you get home, it could essentially begin to dive into your thinking, your emotional state of mind, and begin to direct your thinking and calm you down make you feel better about yourself, about the world around you, because biofeedback would definitely feed AI the information it needs to facilitate that process. So anyway, I can't wait until we get to that. And later on, we're going to talk about implants. And as you know, I've been a proponent of implants. I'd love to have one that does the rudimentary stuff, not just a Apple Watch that gives me my heart rate, but something that goes much deeper than that and tells me what my blood sugar is and whether I need exercise or not, and what any toxicity levels may be, and what vitamins I'm overdosing on. It just goes on, and definitely begin to enhance my physical and my mental performance. So it looks like Meta is coming out with some software products. They say that this release includes pre-trained audio gen models for those who want to start quickly, and tinkerers will have access to the entire AudioCraft code to model and model weighting. WEIGHTING. The open source debut gives pros and researchers a chance to train the models using their own data. All the pre-trained models use either public or Meta-owned material, and there is no chance of copyright dispute, which of course is a whole nother legal conundrum that is currently beginning to brew with all of this content now that is being generated by humans feeding AI and vice versa. What can now be copyrighted? And, certain industries are going away, like your stock photo repositories and like Getty Images, for example. God, I wonder how Napster would survive in this day and age of copyright changes. All right. Looks like we have another couple of questions. TikTok, false hopes. AI will result in a better future for all humanity. Agreed. We won't control it, but we won't need to. Well, that's what we're all hoping. I fully agree. Instagram, Trav Wayfar says, curious to know what the claps are holding. Did you type that correctly, Jesse?
I think he's on Instagram, so he sees those clasps, things.
The clamps, yeah. The clamps are actually an extension of an aluminum plate that holds our cell phone for TikTok and Instagram, or just one of those now? We finally migrated production.
Yeah, it's just Instagram.
Just Instagram, okay. And it turns out that the streaming platforms we use oftentimes are not evolved enough to handle all of the platforms we're on, and eventually they come around. So for now, we're still using a cell phone for Instagram, and that's what's holding the that extension plate to give us the right depth of field. We also have a clip-on lens, by the way, which Richard occasionally uses.
What happened to the car that was there, though? That's interesting.
The last podcast guys took it off.
Out over there. I think it's on the ground behind you.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, let's bring it back up. What I'm holding in my hand here is what has been covering those clamps at least for some time. This is Tesla's next generation Roadster, and it is, of course, a scale model, or I wouldn't be able to hold it like this. And it is signed by Franz von Holzhausen, and the guys took this to the Peterson Auto Museum and briefly got Franz to weigh in and to autograph it for us. We asked him for an interview, but he was very busy that day, and we have not excluded him from the possibility of eventually joining one of our podcasts. So if you're listening, Franz, we'd love to have you on. YouTube, Ingemar Anderson says, ChatGPT says, while AGI claims to achieve human-level capabilities across a broad range of tasks, superintelligence denotes capabilities that far exceed the best human minds. So you got ChatGPT to admit that, Ingemar. Fascinating. And of course, our take is that our human frailties and weaknesses will not transcend into superintelligence because, again, anything that bright is not going to have a low emotional IQ or fall prey to jealousies and resentments and, all of the rest of the type of emotions that have kept mankind from evolving much further than we have at this point. Remember that in this century, with everything that we learned in the last century, we are still killing people for no good reason. Does Russia really need more land? Do the Ukrainians want to be part of Russia? Okay, so here we are, still killing each other for reasons that make absolutely no sense, and then upsetting things like this grain initiative, which, remember, Ukraine is the breadbasket of that part of the world. And there's an enormous amount of food that supports life and human beings in other parts of the world that is now being compromised by this insane, senseless war. Anyway, I'm about to go on a rant here, but I can't wait until AI begins to teach us how to live in peace and have respect and love for each other, and eventually get rid of these things called borders and boundaries. Anyway, I could go on here, but I think I better quit.
We need more rants, but that's good.
All right, let's talk about implants. Jesse, I've got a picture here that we can throw up. And again, I'm a fan of implants. Scares the heck out of most people. There's a software engineer called Mayana Windall. She has 25 implants under her skin that range from magnets to RFID detection devices. Now, as this article points out, that might make your skin crawl if you're squeamish. But for the most part, they're not really noticeable, she says. She told Engadget at DEF CON, a security conference on Thursday last week, she talked about how she became interested in the implants and her experience programming them for personal use, like scanning into her former office building. So you don't need a key anymore, in other words, to get into your place of work. It turns out that at least RFID tech product, scannable technology like subway cards or tap to pay, this simple tech was first patented in the 1970s, and body modification dates back a millennia, they say. Despite this, RFID implants haven't reached their full potential, and they're still a gimmick for a lot of people. But if you want to go clubbing and not bring a bag, you can buy the right style of lock and implant a sensor that you can't lose or scan in and out of your home. She says, but still, they're not magic. Chip implants don't work like Hollywood movies. The founder of biohacking and implant services like Dangerous Things, Amal Gafstra, told Engadget, they're not even active or alive or energized when there's no reader that is within very close proximity.
Is this the image you wanted?
That's it, yes. And I don't know if this is the physical size of the implants because the article really doesn't say, but you can imagine that in the right body part, that something like this could be pretty unobtrusive. They say that that means that the scope of use for RFID implants is pretty limited, and it's mostly foundational tech that you'd have to be able to hack yourself for it to be useful. There are limited out-of-the-box use cases, like, for example, Tesla's key card implant that lets you start your car. So you no longer need to walk up to your Tesla Model S with the key or touch the door handle.
Yep.
It's going to recognize you coming up to your car and automatically unlock it and let you in the car. So they say, when we sell a transponder, we're selling a key but not the lock, Grafstra said. The user has to have some technical savvy to make the lock. So it sounds like it's still an evolving industry, but definitely, again, an application is there. The technology is there. So look out, because this type of thing is going to come. And then, of course, the question is, how many people are going to allow themselves to be implanted with these types of mechanical or electronic devices?
Well, it goes back to the religious thing, right? This is what many would consider the mark of the beast or something along those lines.
Oh, yeah. And as they would say, this was forecast in the Bible.
Yeah, it's all foreseen.
Mm-hmm. They say the companies are now looking for ways to use RFID implants as security tools, too. There's an inherent vulnerability that's associated with RFID tech because it requires access credentials to be open or to being stolen. But having those credentials as an implant at least prevents someone from easily stealing your access card or information. Now, they say the chances of someone coming along and being able to scan your credentials without you knowing it is probably not that high. This is according to Windahl. She says you can't have your hand pickpocketed, or at least not without a machete. Now, there's
somebody just chops it right off.
And we've seen that. Hollywood has had that kind of gruesome content before. All right. There's an interesting quote here from Jim Vibert, sorry. And he says, when fake news meets artificial intelligence, AI, the risk is robots will lie, leaving us with fake intelligence and artificial news, or exactly where we are now. He's probably not talking about general intelligence, where we believe that AI will eventually be past the point of being falling prey to fake news, bad news, or even fabricating things. Again, fabrication, lying, all those things are human traits that really don't seem to be consistent with reasons that a highly evolved, extraordinarily intelligent entity or being would subscribe to, because you have to ask yourself why. And no one's really come up with those kinds of reasons. Why would a machine or AI need power? You'll think about that for a moment.
Especially a super intelligence that already has all the power it could want.
Precisely. Yeah. All right. So looks like we have a comment here. Instagram. Trey Wayfar says, keep cooking, and he's got a couple of flames. Thank you. YouTube, Bernard Homan says, hello from Toluca, Mexico. Thank you, and thank you for joining us. YouTube, Travis Farmer says, our phones are the mark of the beast. We already have our whole lives on the line. You know, I heard an interesting analogy this week. Here's my phone, by the way. And, I forgot to silence it. I'm going to do that right now.
Just in time.
In case, yeah. But instead of hearing that our cars are now computers on wheels, I heard an interesting, different analogy. Cars now are cell phones on wheels. And you know what? They make a good point. This is as powerful, or maybe more so, than my PC that's sitting at my workstation here at the office. Yeah. So we've got a new twist on that whole concept. All right. So we've talked about what AI's impression is. In fact, maybe we can throw that up again. The image of what AI thinks of itself if it were to have emotion. And it certainly does not appear to have an optimistic view of what it would become if it received human emotion. And we're assuming here human emotion because, unlike Bard, which made a distinction between human emotion and digital emotion, this looks like human emotion. And you know, when you look at any of these images for a while, you begin to think about the craziness on this planet when intense emotion gets involved. And I'm not talking about euphoria or joy. I'm talking about the negative forms of emotions. Spouses killing their spouse because of infidelity. People going to war because their religious belief is different. Road rage because someone cut someone off or called someone a name and went back to that dance studio and shot dozens of people. This is the kind of face that you would expect to see when human emotions get involved with a machine.
Now, what was the prompt for this to get these emotion? What did you type?
I said to Midjourney, show me AI with emotion.
And that's it.
And that's what it rendered.
Basically.
That's yeah, and that was the first image. I'm sure that if I began to ask over and over again, we would have gotten different types of haunting images like this.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It looks like I am out of items. And
yeah, that's right at 1 hour.
Yeah. If we don't have any other questions, those of you that are enjoying this kind of brainstorming that we're doing here on a Sunday morning and that want to see more of it, we have a number of these episodes, and I think we're up to episode 11 now. What does the thumbnail say this
So
week?
this was episode 9. Next one will be 10.
10, okay. So there are 8 others out on YouTube under our live heading, and you can see some of the other things and how this brainstorming session has evolved. And again, it's really our audience that helps feed this and makes this successful. So we appreciate everyone joining us. And if you would like us to entertain any questions on our next Sunday podcast that we didn't get to this time, feel free to email us at ev@gruber.com. Now, I know it's not quite appropriate because that's electricvehicle@gruber.com, and that's our Gruber Motor Company site, but it gets to me. I'll be able to see it, and I'll know how to direct it.
Okay, and real quick, Travis Farmer on YouTube is saying, I love these lives. Keep them coming. I love tuning in.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and we enjoy having all of you. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.